Hello, you are watching Uncommon Conversations on Citizen Television. We are reaching you from our Enugu studios. Of course, Enugu is the capital of Southeast Nigeria. This evening, we'll be looking at a very important topic, the state of the nation. Nigeria, our dear country, is in the doldrums. Nigeria is facing challenges. Nigeria is having a complex issues, and Nigerians are mourning. Nigerians are complaining. Nigerians are almost dying. And so, people are saying, which way Nigeria? This is what we'll be looking at this evening. My name is Uchenna Sterila Nyoke. And my guest is a rights and environmental activist. He is Dr. Ifeanyichukwu Okonkwo. Doc, good evening.
It's a pleasure to be with you, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Yes, sir.
We'll quickly have just a look at what the state of the nation looks like. What is it? What are we grappling with? What are the challenges facing Nigeria? And what perhaps may be the solutions?
Yes, sir. I look at Nigeria's situation as Nigeria.
And the third is security. The country faces security challenges, including terrorism, banditry, and kidnapping. Of course, our education is in the doldrums. The country faces challenges in providing quality education to its citizens, particularly in the rural areas. And our healthcare is in shambles. The Nigeria's healthcare system is underdeveloped, and the country faces significant health challenges, including malaria, cholera, which is currently ravaging the country, COVID-19, and the rest. Corruption. Corruption remains a significant issue in Nigeria, affecting many aspects of life, including government, business, and our daily lives. Environmental degradation is also a core issue facing Nigeria, including pollution, deforestation, and of course, climate change. Nigeria is a country blessed with strengths and opportunities. And of course, we have natural resources. Nigeria is rich in natural resources, including oil, gas, and minerals. We have a vibrant young population. The growing youth population in Nigeria represents opportunities for economic growth and development. Cultural diversity. You can't take this away from Nigeria. With over 250 ethnic groups and more than 500 languages spoken. Our resilience is known throughout the world. The rest are known for their resilience and ability to adapt to challenging circumstances. Our economic potentials. Nigeria has the potential to become a major economic power in Africa and beyond. Indeed, these are our strengths and opportunities. And so, Doc, let's face it squarely. 1 year, 2 months, and 17 days. That is what is taking the current administration of the federal government of Nigeria to be in power. And of course, you hear about the renewed hope agenda of the federal government. You are an activist. You follow the Nigerian development trajectory for a pretty long time. I just want to take a careful look at Nigeria in the past 1 year, 2 months, and 17 days under the Tinubu administration.
Thank you, sir. I will look at Nigeria from a periscope that Nigeria is in the midnight situation. Midnight is the time when nothing is clear. It's the time you need light. It's the time you must find a pathfinder. Nigeria did not start yesterday. I am not one of those that believe that we have to continue to look at Nigeria as a country with potential, because time is not on our side. Nigeria is a country where the citizens have lost what it takes to be a nation. The most important thing is that hope is like a mirage in Nigeria. So when President Tinubu said that he is basing his campaign on renewed hope, the renewal has not, because when you say renewed hope, is that there has been hope. We have wasted so much time. I used myself as a test case. I got into the sphere of Nigeria political development in 1987, when the former military president, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, brought the new breed agenda. It was like a new slate. We wanted to start afresh. We wanted to see if we can get the young minds in Nigeria so that we can create a new oasis. That was when I joined. From 87 to the last gubernatorial election, I participated in that regime in 1991. You will see that we have lost almost close to 30 years. 30 years of unproductive state of hopelessness. So I believe that we are talking about democracy in this country, but democracy is a very complex subject. Democracy is not for the uninitiated. Democracy is not election, because democracy is an enterprise where you have to build a nation. Democracy has breadth, it has width, it has depth, it has intellectual content. People who are not particularly having a culture cannot participate in a democracy. Democracy requires honorable people. Democracy requires people with character. Democracy requires intellectuals. Democracy requires crusaders, those who will crusade for causes, those who will say no, those who will give and make sacrifice for development. That is what we're lacking. So today, in the political sphere in Nigeria, you can't talk about renewed hope because there has not been hope. My generation joined in from 1987 to...
But would I be need to interrupt you? It was the hope that you had that made you join at the time you joined.
That is correct.
So there's still hope in Nigeria.
No, Tinubu said renewed hope.
Yeah, like we're losing the hope, and it says we're renewing the hope.
We can't renew it because we never had the hope. Because the new breed system failed completely. We couldn't even form a party.
Okay, if we don't have hope, what do we have?
What Nigeria needs now is to set an agenda. Agenda setting is what we want.
And that's the hope.
No, it's not hope, because Tinubu is not setting agenda. You cannot, in a system where there is no ordinance, talk about hope. In a system where there's no standard, in a system where there is state capture, in a system where there's judicial capture, in a system where you cannot communicate with the state, you cannot, as a person, walk into any office and say, look, this is what this office does. In a system where we bring budgets, budgets, we cannot review what is the percentage of the performance of the budget. In a system where government feel, those who are in power feel that the only thing you do in government is to tax and spend, because our leaders are not thinking. Nobody is being inspired. So how can you talk about renewed hope? So they think about government is a place where you now have to fill the jobs. For example, you are running a cabinet. Tinubu selected his ministers. What are their pedigrees? What are they bringing into the cabinet other than spreading the largesse of those who participated in government? And no, none of them has any specific parish that he's been able to excel, and then he said he's coming in to bring in this innovation.
Dr. Konko, many people will not agree with you.
No, that's my opinion.
Yeah, just
That's my opinion.
For example, the Minister of Finance,
Yes.
they say he comes with a lot of background. Can you write off an entire cabinet said they have nothing to offer?
Let me reply you. The Minister of Finance is managed a failed bank. Have you forgotten? He has no credential that he's bringing into the government other than he worked with Tinubu. His bank failed. He's not a prefect of his class. So I am saying this thing without equivocation, without any grudge about it, but I'm talking about those who are bringing in something into government in terms of administration. All these things we are running around doing in Nigeria is that we have to begin to run a system where you have to, the recruitment system must be to bring the best minds. Go back to your old school days. There was no election for senior prefect of a class. Usually your record speaks for yourself. So the recruiting process is state capture that we're still manifesting all over.
Okay, let me be a little more specific, and I would like you to speak to this matter.
Yeah.
If you have a chance, if you have an opportunity to advise Mr. President, because for now he's our president, and he remains so unless there's anything for the next 3 years
He's the president.
Accounting. So if you have an opportunity to meet him, what will you tell him to enable him to set this agenda that you say he has not set?
To start with, there is a basic philosophy of life. If you don't like a guy, you cannot work for him. It is a basic. People take job without, first of all, for you to go and work for a man, there must be something in that person that attracts you to work for him. He must be perfect. If he's not perfect, other than you're getting a job, I cannot advise Tinubu. Tinubu is not perfect. I can work for him. Whoever I will work for must be intellectually and morally and must have honor so that I can submit to your judgment.
For the love of Nigeria.
Yeah.
You see, as a young man in the university those days, I know when we came to office, when you mentioned the 1991, when you were actually...
When I was running for governor.
Yes. And you were the hope of then Anambra State. It was not Enugu, it was Old Anambra State.
Oh, yes.
Old Anambra State. And we saw you as a beacon of hope. So that time we had hope. Now, like you said, it crashed. Now you still love Nigeria. You still want Nigeria to grow. You want our children, our children's children to also have that hope that you had. And on the basis of that, perhaps, just perhaps, you should say, if I have the opportunity, I didn't say you're advising President Tinubu, but if you have the opportunity to advise him to put Nigeria back to its old moving tracks, what would you say to him?
Doc, I will take you back to the background you have brought into this picture.
Yes.
It's like reminding me, I was from 1988 to 1991. I intellectualized politics. I was moving from university to university, talking to young people and inspiring them, delivering lectures, showing them that I have the intellectual, psychological, and moral capacity to provide leadership. Tinubu doesn't come close to that coloration. So for you to give advice, you don't give advice for giving advice sake. I once had opportunity of being a minister in this country. I turned it down. That was under President Obasanjo. He could not inspire me. So people go and take a job. You see, sometimes you have people who are
Dr. Kongo,
eccentric.
who inspires you then?
No,
If everybody is not inspired, who inspires you?
That's what I'm telling you.
Tell me who inspires you
No,
now.
for you to be inspired, you must have a track record. One, a track record that you. I'll give you an example. When you see a cabinet like the cabinet see in Europe and America, it comes with a generational class. It comes with those who have been able to profess excellence in their given endeavors and fields. They are recruited to come in. They don't come in and say, oh guy, your excellency, your excellency. They are coming in with the wealth of knowledge. They are firebrands. They are bringing them in because of their thinking capacity, their ability to stay and deliver the goods, so that a leader will not waver. So in terms of inspiration, you need a leader who you cannot say no to. That is leadership, because you know that he can lead you right. And that leader must have honor. And honor is one thing that is lacking in this country. It's part of our culture. In our culture, you don't go to a man's house and start eating pepper soup because you saw it. You must first of all find out what type of meat they use to prepare the pepper soup, and see if within your own province or your culture that you eat that type of meat. So all these things are very fundamental. So in terms of leadership, anybody coming into a cabinet is coming in because there is something he's bringing into cabinet. It's not job for the boys. That's why we have stagnated. The prefects have been left out. Those who could come in and with honor to serve and be able to motivate those who will make the sacrifice. Our leaders cannot talk to you and then you say, tell me how the type of leadership that will come in and show you, this is my plan. I take an example. This is my plan for my town. I will help engender this town, that the generation that need, for example, housing within the trench of the regime you are in, are those who are from 21 to 40. By the time you finish and become 45, you should be owning property. All the government does is they sell land and who are the generation that will require that housing? They cannot afford it. They don't have a job. So the leadership is not inspiring.
Okay,
those who are living in one room today.
Yes.
I'll give an example with artisan quarters. If you go to artisan quarters now, it does not exist. People who stay in artisan quarters now have 5 or 6 cars. Because they have now renovated the place, expanded it. At that time was for those internal workers who will stay there as a makeshift and then move over to the next segment and begin to live in a flat. But today, there is no growth. There's no barometer that you can, you see young men who are in their 40s, 50s. They don't have title to land, no property. And you tell me there's hope.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
Perhaps maybe as a summary for Nigeria, which way Nigeria?
I can't advise.
Do we live in the doldrums?
No.
Or do we make a quantum leap?
We are looking for new men. We are looking for men and women that will inspire people. Leadership is about getting people to do what they don't want to do without any force. You will motivate them. During the time I was preparing myself for leadership, I delivered a minimum of 200 lectures, going from university campus to university campus, talking to young people, telling them Babangida said is new men, new breed. We want you to come and contribute. If I get into government house, I should be able to come into your lecture class and sit down and be able to assimilate what's going on and inspire you. So today, leadership is all about siren.
Okay, okay. Doc, let's leave Nigeria.
Yes, sir.
You're a proud Igbo man. You're from the southeast. That's correct?
Yeah.
Now, you know something exists in the southeast called the Southeast Governors Forum.
Yes, sir.
Where all the governors of the southeast meet once in a while to set agenda for the region. With the benefit of hindsight, would you say over the years, not just about this current set of governors, that that summit, that forum is useful to the Southeast?
Sir, I can't write a testimonial for them. First of all, the basic foundation before they became governor is that they are sponsored by a political party. None of the governors today can tell me what the manifesto of their political party is. So it's that organigram that you will use and marry it to see what is the focus of our development, what's our project, what's our target. You are talking about Southeast, APC governor, PDP governor, APGA governor, Labour governor. Agenda setting is difficult. They have no focus. Everybody is there championing his own, whatever he feels that is right. Since 1999, all I hear is about road. They have built road. None of the roads that they designed. Today there's GPS. I believe that if our leaders sit down, even the old track roads our parents were using, we are talking about erosion, the rest of them. Tell me one state that have sat down and do a plan for urban development into a program of one city state, connecting all the cities, finding how we can do our own rail and the rest of them to connect our distance. So it is something like that that you now promote in a larger, so they are from different political backgrounds. I don't know what their manifesto and ideology of things they want to do is. They don't meet, this is not a community meeting that we are Igbos. If you are Igbos, what's the agenda? We must use a platform. That platform is where we will educate our people. Today in Nigeria, I'll give you an example. I came back to Nigeria in 1977 and started a private business. That time, the Igbo people had Cooperative and Commerce Bank.
Yes.
They had Progress Bank. That is the engine of economic development. Who will give you loan? The highest loan you get in Cooperative Bank at that time was 20,000 on your turnover. I was one of the biggest beneficiaries of loan in CCB. They used in opening letters of credit because I had a contract to build some projects in servicing the industry, in housing industry in Abuja. And I was able to get letters of credit of about $13 to $20 million at that time. So it was the nucleus of growth, of economic empowerment of your people. How can you talk about economic development in the Southeast? We don't have a bank. So I look at them, they always sit down there. They were the first to prescribe IPOB. They have not gone to court. They have not remembered that they have to go to court and apply to be joined to set aside that prescription of IPOB. They're not thinking. You need people who will bring new ideas on how to, the people who will shake the table.
But the last meeting in Enugu,
Yes, sir.
if I recollect part of the resolution they reached,
Yes.
that they called on Mr. President to release Nnamdi Kanu. I'm sure you heard that.
Americans call it baloney.
What would that mean?
Baloney means
That means
something that don't make sense. One, they were the ones, I remember it was the Minister for Works that was the chairman then. They were the ones who came and banned IPOB in the Southeast. No hearing. they are Democrats. They were sitting there when federal government went to court to prescribe IPOB. Now that they have changed their mind, they become a new breed, they ought to ask the attorney generals of this state to file an application in Abuja at the Court of Appeal to join and tell court that we were mistaken belief before that we were right. We now want you to give us a leave to appeal to set aside that. So you cannot just write love letter to Tinubu. So to that, I have a legal mind. I know that very well. So they ought to, first of all, apply for leave to join and appeal to set aside that judgment on grounds of lack of fair hearing to the IPOB people.
Doc, just last week, the nation woke up to what they now refer as the landmark judgments by the apex courts, that is the Supreme Court of Nigeria, which among other things say that monies due to 774 local government should be paid directly to them. They went ahead to affirm that state governors should on no account dissolve elected local government councils. They went ahead to say that for money to go to any of the local governments, they must be democratically elected. Since then, tongues have been wagging, those for and those against. Some say it impacts negatively on the spirit of federalism. Some say it's unconstitutional because the power for joint account is enshrined in the Constitution. Some say the local government is not a federating unit and therefore cannot stand on its own. You are an activist. You are conversant with the Nigerian Constitution. I've seen you go to court several times to challenge certain issues. The 5 states in the Southeast are operating, none is democratic. All the states in the Southeast, none is operating a local government system that is democratic. Not in the state of Anambra, not in Enugu, not in Ebonyi, not in Abia, and not in Imo. What's your take?
Sir, I will compartmentalize this question in 2 segments.
Feel free to do so.
Thank you, sir. First, it was Orji Okalo, for everything I give him credit for one thing. It was Orji Okalo that challenged federal government from retaining the local government money in Abia State. That judgment was reported by the Supreme Court of Nigeria. It was reported in Ghana. I think it's reported in part 776 of Ghana. But let me leave about the reporting. That judgment, the lead judgment in that case was written by Kutigi. But most times, what problem we have is that we are not scientific in approach to human development. That judgment, the lead judgment, was written by Kutigi. Kutigi interpreted the provisions of our Constitution and stated that the states and federal are the federating unit. It was the minority judgment of Wace in that case. Go and read and check this thing. That now brought in the provisions in Section 14 of the Constitution to say that the National Assembly can make laws to allocate funds to local government. That is the beginning of the genesis. I was thinking that our legal minds would go back to court with that decision. It's over 20 or 25 years now. Nobody has done anything. Now, that's aside. This issue is that if you don't understand the status of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, you might be looking at the Supreme Court as a high court. The jurisprudence of Supreme Court is primarily a policy court. Policy court in the sense that they will do what they ought that is right, unquestionable. That is why you can go back to that court to review its decision based on new facts. The Supreme Court cannot be criticized that they gave that judgment, that maybe that they overruled themselves, that they made Nigeria. So when people say these things, I just don't make comments because it depends on your level of understanding, appreciating jurisprudence and law. You have to have a legal mind. Now, the problem is that the Supreme Court being a policy court, that policy court will make pronouncements as they view it for development and of the jurisprudence to enrich it. you can come back to court. But the most important thing is that people are worried about the interpretation of that provisions in Section 162. The fundamental issue is the interpretation of the provisions in Section 7, sub 1 and 8 of our Constitution. That is the beginning of our Constitution. The reason why things are happening the way it's happening in Nigeria is that Nigerians are so indolent, they are so unconcerned that they feel that angels will come into this world. Even if in our own families, you have greedy brothers and greedy sisters who never want to share things according to fair and equitable destiny. So the matter that generated all these things, I am the person that ignited this fire. I can tell you about
I want you to hold that thought.
Yes.
We'll just take a quick break. When we come back, I'll then want to hear how you started all that.
Thank you, sir.
Don't go away. You are still watching Uncommon Conversations on Signature Television. I was still reaching you from our Enugu studios here in Enugu, the capital of Southeast Nigeria. And my guest is still Dr. Ifeanyi Chukwu Okonkwo, and we're discussing the state of the nation. Dr. Okonkwo, you talked about being a pathfinder, a crusader for the states to release their hold on local governments. For too long, their states, in particular Anambra State, would appear as guilty as charged. Tell me, what has been the fight like?
Sir, being a person, sometimes you have people who are eccentric.
Are you one?
Yes. You're eccentric because you hate injustice, and you have maybe God has given you the endowment of intellectual capacity to fight not physical fight. The only way, democracy is embedded with rule of law. If you don't know how to use the court, forget democracy. Sometime in 1986, it was 1996, 2006, I went to Federal High Court. It took me time to prepare the process because I argue my cases personally. I went to Federal High Court for the interpretation of the provisions of the combined provision of Section 7 and 8 of our Constitution to enable me participate and run for a council seat. Council seat in my local.
Like chairman or council?
Councillor. I ran for governor. I couldn't make it, so I said, okay, let me
Start from the bottom.
Yes, let me become a councillor. So I filed an application in court for interpretation of that provision. I joined the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation. Bayo Ojo was the Attorney General then. I joined Anambra State Governor. I joined the Anambra State Honorable Attorney General and the Anambra House of Assembly for the interpretation because they were not prepared to create the enabling environment and making the laws to enable me actualize my ambition of being councillor. In that case, when I filed the action, the Attorney General of the Federation opposed my originating summons. They came, we argued it. I must give kudos to a brilliant jurist, Louis Alagwa, brilliant man. The intimidation, everybody was against me. I said, what I wanted the court to interpret is whether the Anambra House of Assembly, as constituted under the law in Section 4, can make laws outside the provisions in Section 8 to now bring in caretakers to run local government. I sought 9 reliefs in that matter. At the end of the day, Alagwa answered all the questions in my favor.
Granted that relief.
Yes, and also awarded me 5 million naira. Because I told them the opportunity of inviting my friend for the council inauguration, I missed it. So
did you get the 5 million?
I collected the money. Just don't award me damages. If you award me, I'll collect it.
Okay.
So that judgment in 2006, I served the Anambra government. They paid me. But I have seen that after Chris Ngige, as the governor left office, Peter Obi came, they continued to wallow in the same lawlessness. Then Obiano came, they continued as if nothing happened. And I had a perpetual injunction to restraining them. Then Governor Soludo came, and in his inaugural speech, in fairness to him, he said he will conduct local government within 6 months. I waited like a cobra. He wasn't forthcoming, so I now went back to court with that judgment and gave them notice, wrote to the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and served him the process. So it was only that I must give them credit that they saw an opportunity to assert themselves and take credit. I give it to them. They now went to court to add one more thing. What I did not get in my first judgment was for the federal government to give me the allocation that was given from 2006 so that I can proceed against Peter Obi and the rest of them to collect that money they ought to have warehoused because we did not have a democratic election. So that judgment was what the Attorney General of the Federation now went to the Supreme Court and added the issue of restraining themselves from releasing money to the local government. But every other thing about the powers of the local government, about the powers of the state to appoint caretaker, which Alagwa pronounced upon, were alive and well in that judgment. The only thing they added was restraining them from giving money, and that unless you have a democratically elected local government. So all this issue about the state governors, their lawyers, the attorney general of the state went to the Supreme Court and filed preliminary objection. This is where they caught themselves on the foot. You cannot file a preliminary objection challenging the powers of the policy court to pronounce on a matter that is well in their bosom. So when they knocked off the preliminary objection, there was nobody in the goalmouth.
And it was the penalty and the direction.
Yes, they could not canvass anything. They could not concede some of the issues that have received pronouncements from both the High Court of some states, because I am the only one who has a judgment of the Federal High Court on local government in Nigeria. They ought to concede certain ones and contest some of them, but they filed a preliminary objection. The body of attorney, let them bring out what they filed. That's the problem. They ought to have considered some and only to contest the issue or even make an alternative relief to save themselves from the bloody nose. So now that they have been crushed, they are complaining that it's not a unitary government. We are still canvassing for us to return back to the regions so that the local government will no longer become basis of sharing money. In the interim, today, I celebrate that judgment. I have the greatest respect to the honorable jurists in the Supreme Court that gave that. It's a policy decision. It's not a judgment per se that you are complaining that the interpretation of this income, you are talking nonsense. That's a policy court because we gave them that power. At that instance, the policy decision is good for the country and is good for everybody. The states ought to warehouse those monies. They did not warehouse it. I am calling on every Nigerian to prepare for class action, to bring litigation against all those people who are hiding in the Senate that they are governors for account. I am doing one in Anambra already. And about 400 politicians who have connived with Peter Obi, Obiano, Soludo, Ngige to disobey the judgment in 2006. I'm bringing them to book. And I'm asking the court that their act of continue to violate that order is something that the court will have to make a pronouncement on and debar them from holding public offices because they could not respect our constitution. And they must account for that money. The people should bring class action against the governors. All these things we are talking about governors and this is because people don't want to take them on. The problem we have in this country is that Nigerians are afraid to die. They will still die. So we must confront these people. If we are talking about corruption, nobody is prepared to fight. You know that people are living beyond their means. Don't wait for EFCC. The states ought to have their own EFCC. They are only Lagos that created their own EFCC. We must fight for survival. Nigerians are going down, aging. You can opportunity lost, and you are complaining, waiting for Tinubu. You are wasting your time. We must learn how to make demand on the system. Making demand must be through the judiciary. The courts, even though they are trying to capture the courts now by putting their children and wives and the rest of them, but we will continue to petition. We continue to fight until there is no El Dorado. You cannot, they say you can make an omelette without breaking the egg.
Okay, very interesting. But you know, the last editorial I read of a national newspaper, I wouldn't advertise the newspaper, said that about 400 and something local governments are risking receiving allocation, the next allocation. It will presuppose that if the allocations are not given, workers in those local governments will not earn salary. Do you foresee an economic political crisis if salaries are not paid to those who work in the local government?
What are the workers doing? They should go to court. They should go to Federal High Court and ask the court that they are asking for leave, that their salaries will be removed. In the matter I filed in Oka, Federal High Court Oka, I asked the court that they should remove all the salaries and the overhead expenditures that are appropriate. But all other monies must be accounted for. That is what the courts are there for. I told you the Attorney General, the body of Attorney General deceive the governors because they don't understand the law. If somebody files an action against you, it's not everything you contest. The ones that you can admit that you see is right. Why must you punish the judge that you must continue to write? You concede them and then challenge the ones you feel that, or bring an alternative way that the court can resolve the matter. The court will hear you. So all this while the states were busy fighting, all they would have done was to bring a caveat and ask the Supreme Court, we agree that we ought to have a democratically elected local government, which we concede we have not set up. But please, for these gentlemen and ladies that are working to support the system, we agree that their salaries will be deducted so that they can get their money, while the other ones are warehouse. That is what they call being patriotic and showing that you are educated and you are knowledgeable, not PhD. So I mean, that. So do you want the person who is hunting you to now go and say, I was generous enough to, in Anambra case, to say, look, all the monies for salaries and the incidental expenditure that are covered in the ordinance book, remove them, but bring the rest of the money. That money ought to be warehoused. If you don't warehouse the money, people are saying that Peter Obi did not talk about this. He cannot talk because the rope is around his neck.
Okay, we sometimes, just last week on this program, we talked about our governors. Governors who refused to conduct the election as very undemocratic governors. Because Section 7.1 guarantees the existence of a democratically elected government. And people swear to oath to maintain, defend, and protect the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The governors are doing what they are doing. Where are the political parties? All these so-called parties we have. They are the engine room of anybody that becomes anything in this country.
What happened in Kenya had nothing to do with the political parties.
No, Kenya is a different...
It is citizens' action.
Kenya is a different kettle of fish. Kenya people, they have a culture different from our culture. People don't say sorry here. People don't apologize. People, you see, some of the officials are resigning in Kenya and apologizing. Some of them said they will return all the kickbacks they've gotten. Yeah, it can happen. Tribalism will not allow Nigeria to move forward. So don't expect what's happening in Kenya. I'm asking the citizens in the state where I live, because I'm not recognized in Enugu State, I am fighting them in Anambra State. But people in Enugu State...
Who said you're not recognized in Enugu State?
No, I cannot run for governor. I can't run for public office, according to Nigerian Constitution. So, Bano is what we are. They don't look for talents to grab the people and put them here. So what I'm saying is that people in Enugu State, people in all the states, should sue the governors for account. Should sue them for not... And make sure that the court pronounce that all the illegality they have done, all the appointments, you know what this thing means? That all this, according to the chieftaincy law we have in the Southeast, where the town unions will present their elected traditional ruler to the local government caretaker, and local government caretaker will take him onwards to the Honorable Commissioner for local government. They give the certificate. All those things are null and void. Because they are not elected. So in Enugu State, anybody that was presented by a caretaker to the commission and they gave his certificate is not a traditional ruler. You need a pronouncement of court. I'm doing that in Anambra. So we clean up the system.
Because I was going to ask you that. Who actually should appoint traditional rulers? The state government or the local government?
You know, it's very interesting. Because I've been preparing for leadership for a long time, so today people tell me you should be a lawyer. The law is not for lawyers. Law is for those citizens who are awake. It's not for those who are sleeping. A law degree does not make you a lawyer. You must have a legal mind. The issue is that when Omerowa came as military governor, Atom Pera them were working on what they called town development legislation. It was Omeruwa that brought it into this thing about recognition of traditional rulers and all. Before this time, traditional institutions is not the same thing as democratic setting, where you come and say, my people are marginalized. We have not been traditional rulers. We want rotation. You go and vote. Vote for who? Tradition is not, it cannot be equated with democracy. It's not the same thing, because you can't sue in the traditional setting. You have no right. The king is, we are all his subjects. So if you go and start voting to bring a man, can you ask him for account? You can't. So I look at our governors and the rest of them, and everybody is saying, we recognize, give him certificates. Which certificate? But all these things is, there's a new chemistry. We need to rebuild our communities. We need men that can think and women, so that we can move on and everybody will have the necessary enjoyment and fulfillment of life ambition.
Okay, Doc, time is not our friend. We just have we have 2 minutes to actually sum up all we've said. One, about Nigeria, the Southeast, and the infamous or famous landmark judgment, depending on which side you are.
I try to tell people, don't ever, democracy requires men and women who will burn the midnight oil. Democracy is not about 4 years, usually you go and vote or don't vote. Democracy is about people who will make sure that the system of government we have selected gives you opportunity to participate, to broaden the space, to also, you need agitators. You need men and women who will bring money and say, look, let us make sure this thing is corrected. It's not, the people with ideas don't have money, usually. But you need people, lawyers, doctors, people who will come out and crusade for good governance. I am over 70. My children have never seen a running tap water. Everybody is buying GP tank. So I will die. I have not seen, people go to, a lot of young people are growing up, they never knew there's something like tap water. So all these things we are doing, everybody is to himself, providing his own security. We are talking about how do we now make Nigeria safe. Every day, Nigerians don't want to rebuild the country. We need to sit down and have a new way of doing political business.
Doctor, I must thank you, and we must come to the end of this discussion. You can see that we still have an opportunity for another conversation.
That's correct.
Because there are issues that we've not touched, and there are issues you've not been able to speak to. So I want to thank you very much for finding time to be here.
It's an opportunity.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching Uncommon Conversations on the Signature Television. We do hope that by 5 o'clock tomorrow, you join us yet for another interesting edition of Uncommon Conversations. Bye for now.